Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Muhammad Dimas Aditya, and in this video, I will present my group summary of creative writing, introduction to other writing, song, lyrics, and poetry. Poems and lyrics have a very near distinct aspects between the two concepts. Both of the two concepts defined as composition of words, lyrics even considered as a form of poem, but also differentiated because of the music aspect. Poetry has its own aspect of music from the poem itself, caused by the usage of meter in poems. Unlike lyrics, which music comes from an outer source, another aspect that can be seen to be similar is the basic form. Where poems have lyrics have lines in the stanza, but the way this line is also different because one is able to be read and listened. In result, the line in poems is visible, while other was meant mostly to be listened, making lyrics line ends have to be more clear, whether depending on rhymes or melodies. These different ways of these two perceived also resulted in the usage of language, where poems can be read and the beauty comes from the perils of diction, which probably can be hard for readers but they have time to understand it. This is a different case for lyrics, where lyrics are meant to be felt while listening to it, forcing the lyricists to be more straightforward with their lyrics. The composition of ideas in poems and lyrics are also near distinct, where poems can have one or more ideas and jump from one other idea, while for lyrics heavily depends on the repetition of the main idea, which come in form of chorus. Lastly, the history aspect of poems and lyrics affects the near distinct similarity. English poems have influenced Germanic, French, and Latin, resulting in class of the language linguistic feature like meter or that stands stress or after syllable from German, and syllabic line, how much syllabus can be used in a line used from the French. The meter and syllabic line in English poetry resulting in formatting types of beat like iambic pentameter and iambic tetrameter. Now in lyrics, the Western has tendency of using two or four stressed syllables in a line of lyrics, though there is an exception for blues lyrics that uses five stresses in the lyrics line. In addition, lyrics line lengths depend heavily on the music because the lyrics are made to be music. There are other reasons to explain the near distinct relationship of poems and lyrics, but all above that are mentioned supposedly enough to describe. Flash fiction. Flash fiction is a super short story, usually between 150 and 750 words. It's a challenging genre that requires efficient storytelling due to the limited word count. When writing flash fiction, you should have a key element like characters, obstacle, action, and chain in the story. Keep it simple by focusing on the main story, having one main character, and not adding unnecessary details. Trust your readers to understand the story even if they interpret it slightly different. There are two main ways to write flash fiction. Start with a short idea or write a longer story and edit it down. Both have pros and cons, so choose what works for you. Keep a list of short phrases to remember story ideas. When writing, make every sentence count. Use character action to tell stories and vary the pace. Narrates to one character's voice, either in first or third person. Don't be afraid to break some rules and add some unexpected twists to make your flash fiction stand out. Flash fiction is a great training ground for writing, but it's not the only genre. You can also write longer story or explore other types of writing. Understanding flash fiction can help you construct smaller units with longer text, like scenes or chapters. And you can even create a sequence of flash fiction that form a cohesive whole in a collection or book. So while flash fiction is fantastic, it's just one tool in writer's toolkit for different types of stories. Writing as experimental practice. For someone who wants to do writing as an experimental practice, The author suggests exploring specific experimental approaches to writing as a way to break away from familiar habits and embrace the unknown. These approaches are presented as categories to provide inspiration, but the writer is encouraged to adapt, innovate within these categories. Mixed medias and mixed genre. This approach challenges readers to reconsider how they engage with literature, shifting from the passive act of reading to a more dynamic and interactive experience. For instance, stories can be composed using digital sounds, poetry can become a radio play, and narratives can be presented through unconventional mediums like CD-ROMs or site-specific installation. Other language. In the realm of experimental writing, there is a growing exploration of languages and discourse that are traditionally considered unsuitable or incompatible with the convention of creative writing. This challenged the conventional notion of a writer relying solely on their internal thoughts and imagination as the source of inspiration. Instead, experimental writers incorporate multiple language and vocabulary from various disciplines such as television, sports, religion, science, and more. Compound import makes strange traditional genre expectation. In the realm of experimental writing, there exists a rich tradition of blending poetry and prose poem, giving rise to subgenres like prose poetry, sudden fiction, new narrative, and language poetry. This poem challenges conventional notion of prose sentence and linearity as an exercise writer are encouraged to explore the limits of what they consider a story or a poem. They may question whether it must be written down, include words, or future characters. The challenge lies in the pushing beyond one preconceived limits and creating something definitively outside the boundaries of traditional storytelling or poetry. This could be a message on an answering machine, on a grocery receipt, a single word, a scream, a gesture, or a joke. The tech is then to transform this element into narratives or poems without confirming the conventional forms. Mediative, poetics, and automatics writing. Another strand of experimental writing focuses on the application of contemplative or meditative practice up to the act of writing. The goal here is to challenge authorial ownership, the ego, and break free from habitual thought patterns. This strategy prioritizes the cultivation of awareness without the impulsion of the conceptual or intellectual filters. Writing that emerges from these practices reveals new relationships and qualities in the world, unhampered by the constraint of names, nouns, and other mental habits that limit perceptual possibility. Page and performance dynamic. Experimental writing challenges the convention of the book form by exploring alternative assumption and possibility. It questions the need for durability, legibility, and reproducibility, and embraces the uses of perishable materials or presenting writing as a form of visual art or architectural installation. This approach aims to enhance the performance quality of text, whether through unconventional page, spacing, or innovative book structure. It intentionally places the issue of legibility at stake, encouraging readers to engage with the text in the unique ways. Procedural writing. Procedural writing is a form of experimentation that introduces intention and accident into creative process. Writers engage in this practice by establishing a specific procedure or constraint that guide their writing. This constraint can range from using found language in a particular context to incorporated change elements into narrative. Alternative form of authorship collaboration. These various approaches to writing poetry, including postural writing, collage, cut-ups, collaboration, and collective forms of writing, challenge and redefine the traditional role of the writer as the sole creator of all genius. They introduce a sense of play and exploration into the creative process, emphasizing the act of following the material and being open to unforeseen outcome. This practice moves on beyond the confines of individual vision, modeling a different kind of world where creativity emerges from collective efforts and chain encounters. Creative critical hybrids. Definition and origin. Creative critical hybrid is an instance where creative and critical writing that used to be a different field of writing are combined together in a single writing. It all began when the academic essay had been stagnant for many years in the early era. Many scholars have grown impatient to those kinds of scholarly writing, so they struggled to implement some narrative writing into their academic essay. Despite all of that, this hybrid intervention then do not emanate only from critics, but just as much from creative writers in thought, criticism, and theory. Some approach of creative critical hybrids include poems essay, a fusion of essay and poem. Some of the poetic features that tend to distinguish are line breaks, extensive use of metaphor and disjunctiveness, switching from one topic to another abruptly rather than by means of smooth transition. Dialoguing commentary. Writing tend to be intertextual or often dialoguing with other texts by commenting on or quoting from them. Stylistic and subversion, a strict feature of the academic essay, but subburdened as a part of the project of creative writing. The sandwich effect, writing content, or alternating between critical and creative writing. Creative critical hybrids can therefore take many different forms. Sometimes they may seem more like works of criticism or theory, sometimes more like creative works that have a critical or theoretical aspect, whichever they disrupt any clear distinction between the two. Hybrid works do not always have to be page-based. They can also appear in a performance and new media form. As mentioned earlier, such works often have a performative aspect because they are multi-voice. Some, even if written for the page, may deliberately adopt a performance style. Some exercise that can be done to improve one creative critical hybrids or to rewrite an essay you have written that has critical or theoretical content until it includes autobiographical, narrative, or poetic material, and write a poem essay on a topic that interests you. That is all my group summary of introduction to auto writing. Thank you for listening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.